Yeah, good evening, viewers. Tonight, as we promised you, we are going to have an incisive discussion on matters to do with religion, um, life, and science. Our guest tonight is the president of the Atheist community, Harrison Mumia. His vice president will be joining us also. We also have Pastor Bernard Ingosi. He's by default has been a resident panelist here. So he will also help us to converse through issues to do with the religion from, I think for him is from the Christian perspective. So you are welcome to. You can participate through the comment section, but at some point we will ask 1 or 2, 3 people to join the studio to ask questions depending on what is your view on issues to do with religion. So I will welcome our guest to introduce himself and just give us a brief background of Atheist society in Kenya. Then Pastor Bernard also, you know him as a panelist, but today he will introduce himself in matters of religion. I think he's having some network challenges, but he will join us. Okay, so let's begin with Harrison Mumia.
Yeah, thank you everyone who is viewing, and I want to thank Eric Wekesa for inviting me to this show on Mutembei TV. As you've heard, and I'm also happy to be meeting Bernard, who is also from my home area. We will one day meet and discuss more about that. But my name, as you've heard, is Harrison Mumia, the president of the Atheist in Kenya Society. The Atheist in Kenya Society has existed for about 5 years now. We were registered by the government in 2016. No, that's around 6 or 7 years. So we were registered in 2016. And our mission is to promote the growth and interaction of atheists in Kenya. We do have members who register, and once you register, you become a member of the atheist community. We do have some objectives that we aim to achieve for Kenya. One of them being an understanding. We want Kenyans to understand the world from an unreligious perspective, from what I will call a naturalistic and humanistic perspective. In other words, we are more concerned about understanding the world from a non-spiritual, non-supernatural perspective. And to do this, we are promoting an understanding of the natural world from a scientific perspective. So that's what we are doing. We are also asking Kenyans to be skeptical of religious beliefs and religious propositions. And of course, we are all about humanism. We believe that this is the only world, the only time we'll be alive. There is no other life after death. There is no life before death. And so we are encouraging Kenyans to make the best out of the only life that they have. So again, let me just appreciate Wekesa from Mutembei TV for having me here.
Yeah, thank you. I think our colleague is having some network challenges. He will introduce himself as he comes up. So as he comes, maybe we can set off. The Kenyan Constitution begins in the preamble by acknowledging the sovereignty of the Lord. or God, or acknowledging the existence of God. What is your perspective on this?
Yeah, the drafters of the Kenyan Constitution, decided to include God in the preamble. And if you look at the preamble, it says, "We, the people of Kenya, acknowledging the supremacy of God Almighty." During the BBI, one of our proposals was to remove that section from the preamble. We believe that section does not represent the views of all Kenyans. As you know, the census that took place in 2019, the national census, revealed that we have over 700,000 Kenyans who don't believe in God. So when you're drafting a constitution and putting everybody in one basket saying, "We the people, believing in the supremacy of God Almighty," that does not represent me, and it does not represent the membership of the society. So that was an error, and we hope that one day we should be able to correct it. However, the second point I want to make about that is that when you go to court, the court does not make judgments based on the preamble. The court makes judgments based on what we call substantive law. And substantive law is the various chapters of the Constitution. And therefore, our worry really is not what is in the preamble. The Bill of Rights, for example, gives Kenyans the freedom of belief, the freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, freedom of opinion, and those ones do not apply to only religious people. And that is why our society has been registered by the government, because the government could not deny us the freedom of association by denying us to our registration. So what we are saying is substantive law is what is used in court, not the preamble. And substantive law is the articles of the Constitution. And this is a very important point, so that those Kenyans who believe that because the preamble says this, therefore atheists do not belong to Kenya, are actually wrong. In law, the preamble only introduces the Constitution, but it is never used. You'll never see a judge citing the preamble in any ruling. They always cite the articles of the Constitution, and therefore we have been registered under Article, I think, 27, 32, and others. So atheists are actually part of the Kenyan population. And by the way, we are here to stay. There's nowhere we are going. We will be here, and we are here to stay. So, we are Kenyans. We will work. We are going to be on the media. We are going to be the newspapers. We'll go to courts. We will vote. And I think it's something people have to just get used to.
Oh, thank you. Maybe perhaps just people to get the perspective. When we talk about atheist, is it that they don't believe God does not exist, or it's just that they know he exists, but they don't believe in him? Maybe you can help us understand, help our viewers understand that.
Thank you. Atheists take the position that God does not exist. And what I mean by position, it is a position in relation to the belief in God. So, for example, Wekesa, you can tell me, I am Wekesa and I believe in God. That makes you a believer. Now, what makes me an atheist is I will come and tell you, Wekesa, I do not believe in the proposal you're making, the idea you have in your head that there is God. Because the important thing to note here is that God is an idea. God does not exist. God is really what human beings came up with when they were trying in those very early days of existence of humanity, going back to about 300,000 years ago, 250,000 years ago, when the first human being evolved into the Homo sapiens, when we had hunters and gatherers, when there was no technology, when lightning was not well understood by human beings, when thunder, when the moon, when darkness and light were not clear why they happened, when there was no clear explanation as to why it rained, the early human beings came up with the idea of God. They created a person who they called God in their minds, and they said, when God is angry, there is thunder and lightning. And that is God who is making it have lightning and thunder. So we understand very well as atheists that gods are creations of men, and we are rejecting the idea that in real life God exists. So we are of the position that God does not exist. And you know, to be honest, God does not exist. So I'm not just saying. I'm actually educating the audience, and I'm hoping that many will come to the same conclusion as we try to share this information.
Okay, maybe the question then would be because for those or us who believe in God, we believe that God created humanity, and for you now you're saying that it's humanity who have created the God, isn't it? Because you say he doesn't exist, so they created such entity and baptized him to be God. Maybe in your own view, why do you think, okay, I'm taking your tangent before maybe I allow Bernard to take a different tangent. So why do you think human beings created God? So what longing pushed them to create a God?
Yeah, you know, human beings created God because they never understood what was happening around them. You can imagine if you were living at a time when there was no science, there was no electricity, you only encounter trees and wild animals in the bushes. And you know, things were happening around you that you never understood, even things like sickness. You can just try and take your mind back to that time when we were just like wild animals in the bush, because there was a time we lived like that. And then put yourself in this situation where a lot is happening around you, and you can then understand how they created a God. What they did is they related. There's something called I've forgotten the name, but human beings have a tendency of assigning assigning reasons for happenings. Let me put it that way. There's always a tendency of human beings looking for reasons why things happen. It's all over the world. And you'll even notice that even where we come from in Luya land, sometimes when you go to a homestead and people are dying there,
Are
one
we
after
talking
the
about superstition?
yes, superstition is one element of human beings. You know, and I was giving an example of a homestead where people are dying of certain sicknesses, or after every year, there's a funeral in that homestead. What will Luyas say? The Luyas will say, hapa wamerogwa, hii boma ni kama imerogwa, lazima wakuje waombewe na pastor or something like that. There's an evil spirit. And you know, going back to the early days of human beings, they also had a problem with understanding a lot of things that happened. And Wekesa and Bernard, that is how God was created. And to date, even after understanding a lot of things in science, I'm surprised with the internet and everything now we know about the world, the universe, the moon, the rotation of the earth around its axis, the revolution of the planets. We know so much. It cannot be that we still believe there is a sky God who is responsible for our lives. It cannot be, not in the 21st century. And that is why I'm hoping the viewers with time will listen to Mumia, register as atheist.
Thank you. Before you conclude, before you conclude, let's have a perspective from Bernard's side, and then we can now go to the next step. Bernard, sorry for that. You have had network challenges, but I was saying that people know you from a panelist's point of view, but today we want them to know you from religious point of view. So you can introduce yourself, and then you can respond to part of what the president has been saying.
Okay, thank you, Kesa. I appreciate the opportunity to be on this particular show. And good evening, viewers. I'm humbled by the experience of sharing on this platform.
You can't hear. I can't hear Bernard. Yeah, I can hear him.
Okay. My name's Bernard Ingosi. I'm a church minister. I serve with the House of Pilgrims in Bakassi, where I'm the resident pastor, and I'm a Bible teacher. We get people to understand what God requires and how they need to live their life according to the divine pattern set by God, who is the origin of all that exists. And on that same premise, Mumia here claims that it is men that created God. I would just want to ask him, where did he come himself from? Does he have a family tree? Or he dropped from somewhere? There was no beginning. Juan Harrison, if you could respond. Is there a family tree in your family, or just you wake up in the morning and a child is running from this bush? He says one of you. Tell us.
Well, I think I have a family. You know, I was born. My mom gave birth to me. You know that that was after, you know, they had sex. I think that is, to the best of my understanding, I really was born by my mom, and so I have a father. That really answers the question of where I came from, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, so in other words, you're saying you did not create your mother, you did not create your father. They are the ones that created you.
In a sense, without them, I would not be here. You understand? And I think that is a very true position. Without them, without my father and mother, I would not be here. I think that's a true statement.
Then it means that life has a source, and from that source, the rest of us come into existence. So how come you are claiming that when it comes to God, it is people that created him and not him that created people, when you are scientifically and naturally accept that for somebody to come into existence, there has to be a father and a mother who are one older than the person, of course, superior than the person, and then they are able to bring that person into existence. How do you marry the two?
I just want to say that yours is actually you're going into the philosophical realm of existence, and basically the argument you're putting across has been put across by very many believers and theologians. It's called the cosmological argument, which basically means that because Mumia exists, Mumia has to have come from somewhere, and that person has also to have come from somewhere. And if you go back, you come to God. I think that is the basic argument. That argument was made by St. Thomas Aquinas in the 12th century, if I'm not wrong. And we call that an infinite. So what happens with the problem with that argument is that it leads to something called an infinite regress. You see, if I came from a person and that person came from a person, if you go back and you say that it is God who was the beginning of all this that exists, then you cannot stop at God. As an atheist, I'll ask you, where did God come from? And that becomes a very big problem for the believer who argues that there has to be a first cause. In the cosmological argument, the main argument is that there's a first cause, and the first cause is God. And we reject that because then the question is, does God have a cause? If God does not have a cause, then you cannot then say that the universe must have a cause. We can put both arguments both ways. I think it's an argument which totally fails because you cannot then explain where God comes from.
No, Pana Harrison, I want us to understand each other here, okay? Does your acceptance of my existence or rejection of my existence make a difference?
You exist objectively, Bernard. I mean, you're a person who exists objectively. That can be proved, so that is not a problem.
And so if, for example, right now we're on Tembe TV, and we're having a show,
yeah.
Okay? If by any means you chose to believe that I am not on Tembe TV right now, and I don't exist as Bernard, will that cancel this program? Will that delete this camera from displaying my image? Does you as a third party, okay, a third party, choose otherwise about me? How does that affect me as a person?
It doesn't, because my actions and my beliefs don't affect you as a person. They don't.
Hey, good. And that also goes for you saying that the existence of God, okay, is not there because you don't believe it. Your belief and failure to believe has no effect on me as an individual on this program. What if we buy the same ideology when it comes to God? Okay? What if there is a God, yet we have a community that has chosen not to believe that there is God? Will that extinct God? Will that eliminate God? Will that do away with God completely?
No, and that is why we are calling them beliefs. Everybody, and if you look at before you came on the show, I was arguing that everybody has a right to believe in whatever they want. In fact, we have we have no problem with anybody believing in even a cow. Indians believe that the cows are gods. If you go to the ancient Greek, they used to believe in various gods. In fact, there we have many more gods than the gods that we have right now. In Kenya,
just before we go there, do you believe there is right and wrong? Addison,
I'm just saying,
do you believe there is right and wrong?
Yes, I mean, morality exists. Human beings have come up with what we call moral codes. And that is why we are able to interact socially in a cooperative manner. And that is the reason why there is morality. I believe
so if if there is right and wrong, okay, it goes without saying that there's right belief and wrong belief. Isn't it?
Yes, again, those are constructs. I agree with you. There is right and wrong, but the question then becomes what is right and what is wrong? That then becomes the core question, because what is right for you doesn't necessarily become what is right for me. Really, that is a very important tension.
But,
I mean,
Bana Harrison, the top you're wearing right now, t-shirt, huh? It was made by some tailor or some designer, okay?
Yeah.
His tape measure, it has a standard of measurement. Either they are centimeters or they are inches and all that. All right?
Yeah.
So what makes the correct measurement of your shirt is the standard measure. Whether it's using centimeters or meters, or that matter. So we cannot say that when centimeters come to me, they are different than when they come to you. A centimeter to Mumia is the same centimeter to Bernard, okay? And that's why it is an accepted standard of measurement. So if there is right and wrong belief, it simply means the wrong belief has not made the required standard of correctness. It does not mean that it's different.
Yeah. Again, this is the whole argument about objective morality versus subjective morality. You know what? You have to understand the history of morality. I understand the whole question of standards, rulers and dimensions. Those ones we've come to generally agree that a meter is a meter. We now know that a meter is 100 centimeters. We know an inch is a foot is this number of inches. There's no debate about that. But when you come to morality, we really don't have an agreement of what is right and wrong. We can't say, for example, marrying two wives could be right for me and Wekesa. It may not be right for you. Because what makes it right and wrong is up to us, really. I may be having
Mumia, what makes it right or wrong? Okay, Goja, the reason you want it to be so is because you don't want to acknowledge an authority that has set that standard of morality. You want to leave it on you and me to decide. But the moment we acknowledge that you as the Mumia family, you have an old man you call your father, okay? And that your father calls shots in your family, he will tell you what is right and what is wrong. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
You know, when you talk about morality, it has nothing to do with rejection of something. I'm not rejecting a higher power by saying that, you know, morality is not something that we can agree on. Do you know why we have courts? Why do we have courts, Bernard? Why do we go to courts to determine issues? Why do we even have a constitution? It's because we have to have a way in which we agree on what is, as human beings. Remember that without these laws, the constitution, and so on, even as atheists, kitu mbaya kitufanyikia tutakimbia wapi? Because us, we also want to be treated well by the society around us. And so I think the question of morality has nothing to do with a higher being. The issue is that morality has everything to do with what we call human cooperation. And I think there's a philosopher who said, I think it was Mark Twain, who said that the worst thing that ever happened, the tragedy of life, is that religion has actually hijacked morality. Because I can see where you're going with your argument. Your argument basically is that God is the source and foundation of moral values. And I would want you to read a bit more philosophy on even if you look at 19th century philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche. These are people who were arguing that God is dead. And the Europeans right now are not so Christian like the Africans. The Europeans have killed God. So what they've come up with right now is what we call
Mumia, you're telling me that God does not exist. Now you're telling me God has been killed. Now I'm getting more confused. But
yeah, Bernard,
I want you to understand that
something small, no?
Okay.
Bernard, just something
Yes.
small before you proceed. I wanted to ask Mumia. In Kenya, we have what we call the Constitution. But most of the time we argue what lacks is the constitutionalism. The Constitution is there, but people don't live by the Constitution. You can still argue that the Constitution is dead because we are not practicing it. So can we then say that if God is there and we're not invoking him, and we have just decided to live by our own means, doesn't deregister his existence? It only confirms to us how far away we are from him, just as we can be far away from our Constitution. Just as in the beginning of ages, as you were telling us, we never knew the force of gravity existed until someone had to sit under a tree and the mango fell on his head and started asking himself, why did the mango fall on his head and it did not go up? And he started inquiring until he came, and with a lot of scientific input, they came to conclude that there is a force of gravity. So that's what I'm trying to say, that we may, okay, the fact that I may not understand the God doesn't disqualify his existence. It only shows how far maybe I've not done my homework well in terms of spiritual exploration. Just spiritual exploration.
I appreciate what you're trying to say is that there could be God, but we don't understand him. We don't know his nature. We don't know much about him. So you're trying to argue for the existence of God based on a flawed logic. Let me give you an example. You cannot argue that there is a tomato behind this phone, but we don't know there's a tomato behind this phone, the phone I'm using. You know, you can't say there is a tomato, but we don't know there is a tomato. Because you can't know whether there's a tomato or not. But you cannot then go ahead and argue there is one, yeah, but we don't know about it. So coming back to God, you cannot argue that there is God, but we don't know much about him. We don't understand his nature and things like that.
No, my argument was informed by this. I was speaking from your perspective. You first of all said it doesn't exist. So I was thinking from that perspective of people who believe it doesn't exist. I was not arguing from my own side. I didn't want to impose my beliefs on you first. I was just opening up and saying, okay, assuming he does not exist the way you guys say. And then I am trying to see it from your own perspective, whether it makes sense. I don't know if you've got me. Yeah,
I'm not quite getting you, but maybe you could simplify what you're trying to say. I'm not understanding what you're saying, but I get the feeling that you are saying that God might exist or could exist, but we don't.
Just allow me to take from here.
Yeah, okay.
What Rekesa is saying, Harrison, is that your claim of ignorance, okay? Does your ignorance of the existence of something cancel its existence? Take for instance, like on the seat where you're seated, let's say that there is a cat behind your seat and you're not aware. Okay, will you are not being aware that there is a cat behind your seat, okay, cancel the cat from being there?
No.
The cat will still be there. And so that God exists, okay, and people don't know him, does not cancel his existence, and we can only relate to him to the degree we are aware of him. So until you come to the knowledge of the existence of the object, that particular object may be of no use to you, but that does not cancel its existence. It will still exist as it existed without you having knowledge of the same.
So following that argument, Bernard, are you saying you personally have come to the knowledge of the existence of this cat? Have you seen it? Because, okay, assuming I've not seen it and I'm saying it doesn't exist, even for you to say it exists, you have to be able to show that the cat exists. So if I ask you now, show me the cat, are you just going to be like, who is ignorant? You have to, you
should also understand that there are different levels of knowledge.
More objective, concrete reasons that can make people who doubt like me now believe. Like, that's what I would expect of you, so that we are on the same page. Otherwise,
I appreciate that, and I want to lead you right there. Okay, what I want you to appreciate first and foremost is that your ignorance of the existence of something does not cancel its existence. Okay, but if I gave you the roadmap, hold on. If I gave you, everybody mute your mic first. When you're not speaking, you mute so that we converse. There are no feedback. Thank you. Now I'm saying, if for example, right now I'm in studio. You don't know the location of this studio, all right? But if I gave you directions or I send you the pin of this place, you'll be able to follow that pin and find yourself here, and you will meet me personally, isn't it? So ignorance does not cancel existence, and knowledge will lead you into experiencing whatever you are ignorant of previously.
Yeah.
So it goes with God. God remains unknown until he is known. And when he is known, then you can relate to him like you relate to anybody else. For example, you go to the supermarket.
Bernard, before you move on, because I know I want to tie what you are saying with, because I know most of the time the argument is tied in science, and I want also to put a scientific perspective on it before you conclude what you are saying. Do you believe in genetics, Harrison? Genetics.
I know, and it's not about
existence of genes.
It's actually a science. We now know it's not about believing. It's about us knowing that.
It's something. It's a fact, isn't it? It exists. But you see, it has its own stages. When before we came to conclusion, there are genes, and they dictate about our the existence of human being and how they behave and whatever, and how even they appear and their morphology. So this father of genetics called Darwin, in his own before he knew that there exists genes, he used to talk about their factors. And there are factors that control human behavior and whatever. Even the factors that control maybe that dictate the color of particular things in that order. He didn't know exactly the genes exist, but he had an idea that such like a thing exists. Until with the time, experiments came to conclusion that there exists these things called genes. Hence, he's called the father of the genetics. So, in other words, I'm saying, Harrison, you may be at the stage of Darwin where you don't.
Okay, exactly... I can't hear you well. I don't know why. I don't know where the problem is with my.
Bernard, are you hearing?
Let me see. Let me see.
I can hear clearly.
Both of us.
Yeah, on my end, for some reason from your end, I can't. Could I connect again in a minute, in a second?
Okay, so let me just in a minute wrap up what I'm saying.
Let me connect again.
Okay. Yeah, so Bernard, you can give a shout to the people in the comment section.
Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate your continued support and followership. We really glad that you're out there and following what is happening. I want to salute Stephen Kimathi, Katwe, Gitashi. Thank you so much. Kuna nani huyu anaitwa Thomas Ajuoga. Hey, powerful, huh? Peter Eric Maura, kuna Sali wa Mburu, nani huyu David Olo, mtu wetu wa nguvu, Ishmael Obura, thank you so much. Rosemary Mchisa, alafu nani huyu William Kipto, thank you for continuing to follow. I believe you are getting value into this. Kuna Christine Achieng, nani huyu mwingine. Asante sana kwa wote ambao mnafuata. Harrison is back. Wekesa, you can make your question.
Let me just wrap up with what I was saying, that you can be at a different stage of maybe exploring genetics. You are at that stage where Darwin was talking about factors, but he had not conclusively known that these factors are now the genes we're talking about. But whichever stage you are does not disqualify the existence of genes. It only reveals your measure of understanding about the genes. That at some stage, Darwin didn't know that thing is there, but there are some things that led to him to think, okay, there's something that exists that controls all this. So if I look at Darwin's argument at that point, from my knowledge right now, I could say that he was ignorant. But however, there is something that he was leading him to make those conclusions. So that's why I was coming back to the argument of Bernard. The fact that you have not conclusively, because the God I'm talking about maybe may not fit in my mind, isn't it? Even scientists say that even when you stay with a human being, including your wife, you may not know her fully. There's just a measure in which you understand her. But as you live with her, you continue to explore, you learn more. So there is a measure we know about this supreme being called God, isn't it? But the more we explore, the more we understand it, and the more we appreciate its existence. So can we just say that our understanding of the supreme God depends on the level of knowledge we have about him? I will want to leave it there and Bernard to continue. Me, I'm just a motion mover.
That's just a quick one. You are making two comparisons that are not correlated. You're comparing a supernatural concept that is has qualities like all-powerful, that has qualities like omnipotent, omnipresent, and all these things. You're comparing that to genes. Genes are things that you can even, these days, you can actually be told this is your son. They just take a small piece of hair, put it under the microscope, get the gene, put the gene against the gene of the father. If there's a match, they realize you're the father. But you cannot make such a comparison with a concept such as God that is said to have created humanity, not just humanity, created life, created the universe, and is responsible for the workings of the natural world, and is responsible for morality, as Bernard is saying. So those are two comparisons that are not correlated. And Wekesa, what you're doing is what we call the logical, you are actually committing the logical fallacy of
No. Wait, before you conclude, there's something called truth is parallel. What exists in the physical can decode what exists in what you are saying supernatural or what you can't see with your naked eye. So I'm not saying they are the same. I'm only using that as an example. We use known to unknown, isn't it? We use what you see to explain what you can't see.
Yeah, the problem is that you cannot advance an argument using two items that are not related. Really, that is really just
Alison, you are missing the point. What Wekesa is saying is that there was a time when genetics were not known, and the person who came up with genetics had a level of understanding, and he used to call them factors. You get that? So he said there is level of knowledge. Knowledge comes in bits. You learn by progression, okay? And it's from what you learn. It's like what we believe in the Bible is that revelation is progressive. What our fathers learned and then taught their children, there is a particular higher understanding that the children will have and then pass it to their children's children. So there is gradual growth into wider perspective of understanding that is more clearer as we get closer towards a particular conclusion. So with limited understanding, there is limited conclusion. Like the people who came up with the aeroplane, the scientists, before the discovery of plane and ability for the plane to fly had come to conclusion that there is no way a metallic object can go in the sky, according to their level of understanding at that point in time. But somebody picked up the concept and build on it, and I was able to defy what they had concluded. So Wekesa is saying, could it be that it is your level of understanding that has made you to come to that conclusion about God? And probably, if you are led into greater, better light, you will change your mind.
Yeah, and as you answer that question, I want you answer it in retrospectively to your knowledge of this God, because there is a time in your history you are a Quaker believer. You are going to church and you believed in that God. But maybe, let's say now, the entrance of knowledge about that God does not exist is that which pushed you away from it. So at that level, let's say that you are ignorant. That's why you believe there is God. I'm trying to argue from your own point of view. Maybe you are ignorant. and you believed in God. Now that you got the knowledge, you came to a conclusion it does not exist. And for us from our end, when we were ignorant, we didn't know there is God. But when knowledge came, we realized there is God. Are you getting that perspective?
I get the point. So I think the basic point you're making is that you know there is a process towards. I mean, there's a process of attaining knowledge and understanding, and we are at different stages of getting to this point of understanding and knowledge. And therefore, you're basically saying, even with God, maybe Mumia here, the president of the atheists, is at a level where he does not understand what? God, and maybe what he needs is what? To be exposed to more knowledge about God, and maybe he will understand what God is. Am I correct in explaining where you're coming from?
That's perfect.
So now coming back to Mumia, I will tell you that unfortunately, there are a number of gods who exist in the world. In fact, if you go back, if you go further down to about 2,000, 3,000 years ago, do you know that the biblical God didn't exist? That the biblical God is actually a latter-day God. And before Christianity, we actually had a number of various. If you read the Bible, Pastor, you know the Bible very well. If you go to the Old Testament, you know that the Jews used to believe in various other gods.
But hold it there before you proceed with that argument.
No, you can't interrupt. No. I have to finish the point.
I want to give you something. You continue. You will pick it from there.
Too much, and I'm not even making my points properly, because my point here is that when it comes to Charles,
just allow him.
When it comes to Charles Darwin and genetics, there is no debate. There's really no debate. Nobody is debating the issue of genetics. In fact, we are using that knowledge to make other discoveries. We are using that knowledge to know this is the father of Mumia, this is the mother of Mumia. So there is no debate. There is nobody else who has come and said there is now other genetics or other ways of genetic understanding. Scientists have come to accept globally that human beings are actually, genetics is part of the human making. When it comes to God, one would expect that if we follow your argument, then we will come to a point where there is a unified understanding of who God is. Unfortunately, you go to India, you go to Israel, even Israel, where the Jesus Christians believe in, Israelites don't think that person was the son of God. You go to Arab world, they believe that in fact Jesus was a mere prophet. You go to other countries, you realize that the concept of God.
If we pursue that your line of thoughts, look here. If you pursue that line of your thoughts, is what you are actually looking for is an opportunity or an excuse to deny the existence of God. If there is an existence of a counterfeit, is a proof that there must be a genuine product somewhere. Okay.
No, we are
the multiplicity of gods, the multiplicity of gods, and the people's faith in different gods is a proof that there must be the unknown God. Okay. And this unknown God, when it becomes known, okay, when it becomes, it doesn't have to be universal. It doesn't have
God
to be
has
universal.
God is a universal. We have to agree
your knowledge, hold on, Mumia. Your knowledge of God doesn't have to be universal for it to be right.
No, it has to be. Are you saying that then we can just have different? For example, are you agreeing therefore that there is there is no problem with human beings believing in different gods. Are you saying that, Pastor?
They are.
You are not understanding what Bernard is
No,
asking. Bernard, let me help you. He is not understanding what Bernard is saying. Your knowledge of God doesn't have to be universal means. It is subjective. It is your problem. It is you who has a limited knowledge about him. But the God himself is there. It's only that our exposure is different. Let me give you an example. There's an example they give about the 4 blind people who went to explore an elephant, and the 4 guys got a different experience. Whoever touched the tail said that the elephant is tiny it's as small as a rope. Whoever touched the trunk said the elephant is like a tree. Then whoever touched the trunk said the elephant is like a rock. Then whoever touched the ears said that the elephant is like a blanket. And then they asked, so out of the 4, who explained the elephant? The answer was none. But so how do we then explain the elephant? They said that now let's have all the 4 people put their experience together. Because if you get the experience of the ears, the experience of the trunk, the experience of the horns, and the experience of the tail, all of them sum up to. So you cannot tell me that the tail knowledge is irrelevant. The issue is it's limited. So if I put all the knowledge together, then I can understand. So there are different religions. Some are exposed to God in a very minute way. But if all of us got the whole experience of God, then we will be explaining the whole thing. That's why even when you talk about Quran, they have to talk about Nabi Isa, but because they are limited about the Nabi Isa thing, they can only talk about that small experience with him.
A Muslim will make the same argument you're making and diminish the Christian God. You know, I think from your perspective, you're being a bit.
Wait, I finish. You rebuttal.
Because you're coming a worldview of Christianity. But I think what you have to appreciate, if you go to India right now, Indians will not argue like you. And so I think
order, please. Order, Mumia, please. Thank you. Allow Eric to finish his whatever question, then you respond.
Let me finish in 1 minute,
Please,
and then you respond.
And we have to guess how we are time bad.
Yes, in one minute, let me finish. First of all, you said that nobody disputed the Darwinist whatever theory. There was many criticism that were laid against Darwinist theory when he came up with the theory. There are people, they talked about the shortfalls of that theory. And if you can go and read, you will check that not everybody agreed with him. But at the end of the day, I told you it's just the stage. So we can argue about God, but it's just the stage at which we are in. But there will come a day, and then we say that today, nobody has a problem with God. Maybe we only have different experience. There was a time Africa had no idea about the Bible. Actually, when the first missionary came, they described Africa as a dark continent.
I have a big problem with missionaries being the basis of our understanding of religious.
I'm just giving an example. Don't rebuttal everything. I'm just giving an example.
I have a big problem.
So there's a time we say that it was dark because maybe based on the Bible, they had no knowledge about the Bible. There was a time even Africa had no knowledge about the Quran. So there is also a time where naturally Africans are not atheists. So there is no time. There was a time maybe Africa did not have a belief of atheism. You have been
not an African.
Yeah.
Are you saying I'm not an African because I'm an atheist? I'm not supposed to be African.
I'm saying there's a time in Africa there was nobody who was believing in atheism. There was a time in history, our history of our nation.
I agree.
So are you getting the point? So let me allow Bernard to proceed from there. Me, I was just a motion
And I also
mover.
want to make some final remarks.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Mumia can do the response. You respond to what Wekesa said. Then I ask you 1, 2, 3 questions. We conclude. Our time is gone.
All right. You know, Wekesa has, and I agree with a bit of what he's saying. You know, there was a time we didn't know anything. There was a time there was no Christianity. There was a time there was no Islam. There was a time there was no Charles Darwin. There was a time there was no genetics. And we've come to learn and understand the world by people, you know, discovering, others coming up with ideas. Some ideas we are still debating, like God today. Others we have generally come to accept, like genetics. The problem I have is that, and you have to understand this, Wekesa and Bernard, that God is not to be approached from a scientific. You can never, I don't think this debate about God can be approached the way Darwin approached the whole idea of genetics. Darwin actually did a lot of work, took a lot of animals, matched those animals. It took, I think, 10 years of research. In terms of God, normally the debates about God end up being philosophical. That's why you see Bernard bringing the issue of morality, the issue of cosmological argument. Where did we come from? Because that's a big question. People normally say we came from God, and we reject that idea as atheists. We say no. Nobody really knows how life began. So I think a good understanding of some of the arguments that are being advanced by atheists, on even the argument from evil, for example. How do you explain that there's so much evil in a world which is governed by this particular God? If you ask any religious person that question, they'll not answer. They'll tell you there is free will. That free will argument just fails. Because, you know, how can you give people free will, then you get annoyed at them and how they use that free will? Also, I'll just say that we are at a time when we are starting to realize that human beings are not governed by a sky supreme being, a sky man. I think we are here because of the process of evolution. We came from apes. Now it's a known fact that we are actually apes, and we are in the process of evolving even as we speak. Evolution is still taking place, and a lot of other species have been evolving. That's why we have birds, we have lions, we have reptiles. It's just part of the tree of evolution. That is why we have the spectrum of animals. Now we understand things like the planet. We understand things like space, time. People have gone to the moon. People have put rovers on Mars. These things are no longer strange to us like they were some time back. I'm just inviting Bernard and Wekesa to try and be a bit more skeptic of your own beliefs. Don't believe so much what you have been indoctrinated over the years to believe. Be skeptical of even your own belief. And once you're skeptical, then you open up yourself to the process of learning. Look at what people have said, arguments that have been made, and then you'll probably see where we are coming from. I think for the question of God, there is no evidence so far. There's nobody in the world has come up with concrete evidence for the existence of God. What we have is ideas being thrown around. God of the Bible, God of the Quran, ancient gods. And you know, we have a plethora of gods all over the place, and everybody is trying to argue for their own God. But there is no evidence that has been presented that even scientists can agree upon, that this is how God is, this is how God, the nature of God, and he did this and that. There's no evidence. And so that is where I leave it, hoping that we are going to be a more skeptical nation.
Okay, thank you very much, Harrison.
Question to you to make your party. Bernard.
So, what did you say?
Do we Is there any question to answer, or we do the parting shots?
No.
Because of
I
time.
am not. I'm not through with Harrison. Harrison has made the submission. I gave him time to do that. Now I want to take it on him. Okay, on the aspect of
Okay.
what he has already submitted. Now, Bwana Harrison, I understand your point of view and where it's coming from. In my opinion, it's looking for an excuse to escape the inevitable. In the sense that you are from the Mumia family, and the Mumia family tree has not raised one ape that turned into a human being since the Mumia family started. If by now you have a child, I don't see how many of those children are apes and are born apes, and then when they grow, the tail disappear, and then the ears change because they are from day 1, day 2, day 3, then they turn into a human being. All you're putting together is an argument that wants to have an argument in itself without it coming to required conclusion. The problem why I may conclude you have a problem with God is that God is not found scientifically the way you alluded to it. You cannot figure him out. You cannot imagine him into existence, and you can't create him. That's why the Bible is clear on how to find God. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 6. He says, without faith, it's impossible for you to please God. For he that comes to God must believe that he is, and that is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. The discovery and appropriation of God begins from the acknowledgement of his existence. So as long as you deny his existence, you are cut from the lineage of those that can know him. Why? He that comes to God must believe that he is, and that is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Then in Psalms 25, I think it says, a fool has said in his heart that there is no God. Okay? So it is your knowledge of God requires your acknowledgement of him. Now, as long as you insist on his non-existence, you remain cut from the flow of the knowledge that can usher you into that understanding. There are different levels of knowing. There is what you know by seeing. There is what you know by hearing. There is what you know by believing. God exists in the realm of what you know by believing. You first of all believe, then you see. You don't see, then believe. So if you cut yourself from the believing, then seeing, and you insist on seeing before you believe, then you cannot appreciate that line of thought. I put it to you that there is nothing that science has brought into existence, not life, not anything. Everything science has ever said is a discovery of what already existed. From the law of gravity, from everything else that has been explained scientifically. They use what exists to explain what exists and try to figure out how it came into existence. God is the factor behind the existence. He's the only one that alludes to have created. And what he created is here. He says he created it, and he shows us what he created. You tell us he doesn't exist, but but these things are existing. How they came into existence, you say evolution. This evolution used to take place in the past and is no longer taking place now. How come children are being born human beings? Fish hatches fish. Cockroaches hatches cockroaches. There is no time hatches a chicken, then a chicken turns into a cockroach, then it turns into an ape. We need to appreciate that there must be a mind behind the existence of the entire universe. And as we exist differently, there must be somebody behind this. The complexness of what life is and how all these genetics you're talking about, how come a tree has never become an animal and an animal become a tree? Or all this exchange. What is an animal remains an animal, gives birth to an animal, and continues to replicate as an animal. It never reaches a place where it begins to replicate as a plant. Okay. Since these things are not mixed and there's no confusion, there must be a factor behind it that said, you go and exist as a tree, okay? And you will always be a tree and give birth to trees. You go and exist as an ape, and apes will always give birth to apes as in that their lineage.
Are you married?
Sorry?
Ban, are you married?
Yes, why?
Do you have children?
Of course.
Or a child? So your child looks like you, and a bit of your child looks like you, and a bit of your child looks like the mother, right or wrong?
Yes, why is that the case?
That is evolution.
That is not evolution.
That is evolution. Evolution.
That is creation. After we were created in the image and in the likeness of God, we were empowered to go and multiply. Just like
I'm saying now, the evolution brings together two genes from different, and they create a new being. That is what we call evolution.
Have you ever created genes? Have you created genes and mixed them and they were able to produce a human being?
No, I'm saying the new human being, your son is not a replica of you 100%. It's not a replica of you.
No, it is a replica of me because I am human. I can only give birth to human. I cannot give birth to monkey. Just like
I'm saying evolution.
Give birth to human beings.
I want to bring you to a closer understanding of evolution. Stop talking about
look, Mumia. We are concluding
those changes that take place over a long period of time.
What you are explaining cannot even make sense to anybody because you are denying the inevitable. There is no human being that has given birth to an ape, or an ape that has given birth to a human being.
I'm just telling you that your son and you are different. You're not the same. That's what I'm telling you. That is evolution.
Categorized as human beings. We are not apes. We are not monkeys.
You see,
we are not fish.
Evolution is not about apes turning to human beings. Evolution is a process of small changes happening within the genetic makeup to produce new beings. They don't have to be monkeys. You don't have to be a monkey to evolve.
Oh, look here, Mumia. That's another excuse I'm telling you.
Now let's evolution from that point.
Look here.
I think not this.
Order. Listen. What I'm saying is your evolution theory is just that, a theory. Okay? It has no even a naturally sensible explanation. Because if you're telling me that we are evolving eventually, we'll end up as monkeys, by now we should have at least had some monkey from the Mumia family. How long has the Mumia family been in existence? How long will it take before we become that evolution you're talking about?
How close we look like, how similar we are to.
Not how close. Look here.
Imagine we are so different from apes. We don't realize, Bernard, that we are actually apes. What makes you so different from a chimpanzee, by the way? Do you know chimpanzees have 98%?
Excuse me, Bwana Harrison. If you come from the ape family and you look like an ape, that's good for you. I don't. Okay? I don't, and I'm not related to apes. I am a human being, created in the image and likeness of God, and I will forever exist. And the Ingosi family will forever exist as human beings. We will only give birth to human beings. We cannot give birth to apes. If you want to change your family and they begin to give birth to apes, congratulations. But truth be told, like I told you, there's knowledge by seeing, there's knowledge by hearing, there's knowledge by touching, and there is also knowledge by believing. If you want to know God, you know him by first believing, not by figuring out, imagining, or testing.
Thank you.
That's how God is known. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Mumia, there is something you alluded about the God of the Bible, isn't it? And you said he was discovered some 2,000 years ago or something like that. You know, you are a scientist, and we talk about the year maybe Vasco da Gama rounded the Cape of Good Hope, the year Mount Kenya was discovered, the year Lake Victoria was discovered. Can we say that the history of Lake Victoria dates back to the day it was discovered and named Lake Victoria? Can we say that the history of Mount Kenya dates back to the day someone went to the top of Mount Kenya and named it, this is Mount Kenya, and he said 1965? So you cannot tell us that the God of the Bible dates back to the day maybe the Bible was written, or the day maybe the history of the Bible, maybe we talk about 2,000 years ago Jesus existed. So it cannot be that the God of the Bible dates back to that period. It is, we are only saying that from the time we discovered and understood, that is when we can account for that. Just as Mumia, you got married maybe when you are 30 or 40 years, and from that time and you meet someone and you say, I cannot live without her. But you had lived the other 30 years alone. You had not lived with her, but now after meeting her, you think you cannot live without her. So what I'm saying, there is a history we didn't know about God, but that does not make him limited to our knowledge. That he doesn't start to exist from the day we discovered him. No, maybe existing in our mind, but existing in his own nature, it is not limited to our knowledge. That's where I want to live. So I want Bernard, kama kuna maswali hapa kwa comments, we can answer them. Then we make our parting shots.
I think in the interest of time, we have to conclude because the other show is supposed to begin by 9:30. We are shy of the same. But this is
so let's begin with Mumia.
Dive into for further follow-up. Sorry?
Let's begin with Mumia. He can give his conclusive.
Thank both of you for having me on the show. That's the first thing I really appreciate. And secondly, I think there have been a lot of, what we call logical fallacies that have been made during the show. We haven't had time to look at them. So I think mine is just to urge you, both Wekesa and Bernard, go and look at how to frame arguments in a more logical way so that you don't mix up issues. Because I've seen, really, that is what has been happening for the most part of the show. On my part, I will say that, even Bernard was misrepresenting the whole idea of evolution. Please read the book that Darwin wrote. He wrote a book called On the Evolution of Species. And please, and that's why we are having a problem, because we lack knowledge. Again, we're talking about knowledge, but we lack it. Other than that, I will say that, you know, on behalf of the atheist community, because I know they are watching, I just want to thank them for watching Mutembei TV. I think I've subscribed. I will be watching your shows, and I'm hoping to be invited again. If you're watching this show and I have persuaded you, please go to our website, have a look at it. You can register. We are a happy community. We'll give you more information about what we do. So nimesema asante Wekesa na Bernard for having me on board. Thank you very much.
Okay, asante sana Bwana Harrison. It has been good. Yes, Wekesa?
Yeah, proceed.
Okay, asante sana Bwana Harrison. It's been good debating with you and interacting, and I look forward to having this moment again. I believe that as we continue the conversation, we will come to a right conclusion on all these matters. As much as we may look at life from different perspectives, there is only one life and there is only one way about it. And so if we appreciate that right way toward that particular life, we'll end up with the required way of living. Otherwise, I wish you all the best, and let's do this later on. And those of you in the comment section, please, thank you so much. Allow us to sign out because we must come back with our open forum show. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you, guys. This is what I want to say. From Harrison's perspective, I want to tell you that we are skeptical. That's why we allowed different views to come on this channel. If we were not skeptical, we would have said our way is the highway. We should bring people who believe like us to be the ones coming on this channel, and we advance that idea. But the fact that we allow different views to come here, it means we want to see life from what we want to understand why you understand it that way. We also know, even terms from their own origin, that the original term is theism, which acknowledges that there is a supreme being. So atheism is the rejection of that idea. So rejection cannot be the prototype. It's just a dissent. And so we know there are a few people who dissent with that. You also told us that we only have 700 people in Kenya who acknowledges that there's no God. In other words, you appreciate that after 45 million people in Kenya, yeah?
It's not 700.
My conclusion remark, you said 700,000. 700,000.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
so that means the rest of the 45 million plus believes there is God. And so that's why they put it in the preamble. We normally say, let the majority have their way, the minority have their say. Thank you. Otherwise,
please, guys.
Yeah. Otherwise,
we really have proper arguments. But thank you, I appreciate.
Yeah, allow me to make my conclusion remarks. I may not even have believed what you said, but I allowed you to make it anyway. So I'm saying we need to know that there's something called also polytheism, where there are those guys who believe in many gods, and there are those who don't believe God exists, and there are those who believe in one God. We allow all knowledge to interact, but at the end of the day, the supreme idea is what will reign. Otherwise, have a good night. We meet together 10 p.m. at the main show. Have a lovely night, guys. Harrison, you are much welcome. At your deputy mwambie tunamngojea hapa. We need to interact more so that Kenyans get enlightened. Yeah.